Welcome back to Beauty Marks Podcast, a space where we embrace our marks acquired through our journey. My name is Elizabeth Javillon, and welcome back to another episode of this podcast. Today, I'm very excited to be back in the studio at Hi Hello Labs in downtown Orlando with a different setup as well. I feel like trying different ways to have the studio setup has helped me to just feel comfortable, find out like what is the best vibe. And so let me know if you like this vibe with a table. And I know you guys like the couch. That's like my favorite. It's like the couch interview style. It's really fun. And so I'm just really excited for this episode and just to be chatting with you guys. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and share it with a friend. Let someone else know about Beauty Marks Podcast. And if you want to support the podcast, you can do so at beautymarkspodcast.com and in the link in the show notes. On today's episode, I wanted to give you guys an update and just kind of continue the series of singleness. So last week's episode was about singleness and the road less traveled. And so when we think about that, another part that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about is actually the post-breakup reality and what actually happens with withdrawals, loneliness, the things that you feel, and the things that maybe stop you or hold you back from moving forward. I know that now being able to look at it with a different perspective, it helps because that's what time does when you like intentionally do something with that time during the healing process. But I know that originally when I first, what kept me stuck there for a while for me personally were certain things that I was allowing or not setting boundaries or not being honest with myself to see like what do I need to do to protect my peace, to let go, and to kind of move forward. So something for me first that was making it hard post-breakup was the contact with my ex. And let's be honest, let's be real, when you're used to just talking to someone and when you're used to just having a routine, it's hard to break that, especially because I was in a long-term relationship. So the reality is that it's like that whole process of grieving, no one tells you about that. Everyone says like, okay, it's over, but it's like you actually grieve the relationship. And sometimes it's even in the relationship that you're grieving when you know it's not a good fit for you. So for me, what kept me there longer was keeping contact. So the back and forth of like, how are you? You know, missing the person, just kind of allowing little windows in your life to still have access to them and also them have access to you. So that can be as little as social media. So like checking to see if they're looking at your stories, checking, to see if they're in someone else's story. So it's like that kind of obsession of contact or knowing what they're doing or anything like that will keep you stuck. And until I was able to finally get to the decision to hit the block button and cut off that contact, that's really what helped me to move forward. And if I'm honest, that actually took a really long time. I would love to say that I did it right away and I did self-love and care and really protected my peace during that time. But no, it was really hard because letting go of something that you thought was going to be, your future, it's hard because you're not only grieving the person, but you're also grieving the idea of what it would have been like or the future that you had made in your head. And I think that's the part that people don't talk about, that the feelings that come with that. So that leads to staying stuck in the past. I feel like what makes it hard to let go or to move forward in your life is always reliving the past or the good times with someone. It didn't work out for a reason. And there's a part of you that eventually you'll get to the place where you can accept that there was good moments, there was bad moments, and this person just wasn't the one for you, and things don't work out. I think originally when I first went through the breakup, it was a lot of pain. There was a lot of just things that were hurtful in that process, things that were just, I was trying to understand, that I wanted an answer. I wanted a closure. That keeps you stuck for a long time when you want closure, when in reality, sometimes things just end and things just aren't what it is, you know what I mean? And so now when I look back, I see that I was very young and I had started dating this person when I was 18. And so to go through that process and grow as an adult, I wasn't the healthiest version either. I played a part in part of my misery, and and at first I felt a lot of like beating myself up about it. Like, man, I should have known. Like, man, I should have let it go from a long time ago. Here were all the signs. And through therapy, like I was processing a lot of that stuff, and it would come up. I would be like, man, Liz, like you could have just never gone back, because the reality is that there was a year that we broke up like 10 times. And like, that's not healthy. Like, don't normalize breaking up. And people make it like, okay, you're young, you're figuring things out. But how much damage that caused me, and how like it started a cycle that I just couldn't get out of. And that's the reality. Like, you can be in dysfunctional patterns that you see as normal. Like, you're kind of like, this is, relationships are hard. So then you're just like repeating the same thing over and over. And I remember I got to the point where I was like, this is literally insane. Like, I'm doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. And I always end up at the same place. Like, and we would always break up for the same exact reason. And I feel like what kept me stuck there was the shame that I put on myself. And also just beating myself about stuff that I didn't know, and so that process took some time. And then also getting to the place where I realized that I had to play a part in the dysfunction. And that was something I had shared before. It was that I realized that self-care and self-love for me means so much, because I didn't have that. And I didn't care about myself. I didn't protect my heart. I definitely lost myself in relationships. And so I feel like now I have seen how having care for your heart, protecting your mind, and being able to see what you need is so important. And having your own voice. I feel like now I have been more vocal about a lot of things, like through like what I want and what I don't want, than ever before. And I feel like if I was to go back to like the 21-year-old version of me, that would have changed a lot of things. But we can't go back in our past. So why live there? Why, beat ourselves up about stuff that we didn't know, and a version of us that needed grace and that needed to just be, to just learn the tools that you never did. So aside from that, beating yourself up and kind of reliving the past, it's also what happens when like you miss kind of the toxicity, because you're so used to it. And so there's a part of you that's like, okay, I know that there's like the process, like you accepting that it's not going to work out, but then the process of you being like, why do I miss it? Or like, why do I like still want to know about this person? Or like, if it was so bad, like why, like why? Like, and I remember like trying to tell myself, like, stop thinking about it. Like, it was like, we can't control our thoughts. We can just control how long they sit there and what we do with those things. So I remember in the beginning, what kept me stuck was a lot of like, stop thinking about it. Like, kind of like, again, is more the beating myself up about stuff that's like, it's normal. It's a process, things that remind you of the person, just memories and things like that, places. And it's like, it's part of it. And it's part of the grieving also, because there were good times as well as there were bad times. And that doesn't mean that you're stuck in that. And that doesn't mean also that you should go back, because that is a whole nother thing where you start believing that because you haven't, it's been 6 months, it's been a year, it's been 2 years, that means that you're not moving forward. When in reality, like moving forward really doesn't mean that you never stop thinking about them. It just means that you're deciding not to go back, to that. And you're not allowing that either access. I'm really big on the whole cutoff thing, because I saw how when I would leave that door open, I would always end up in the same place, and it would end up hurting me. And it's like, our heart, it can be so fragile, and especially when you're in a place where you care about someone, like you're doing a disservice to yourself. And I would care so much also about the other person, like, but like, I want to be there for them, or like, they're also hurting, so I want to help them. But it's like, no, like you cannot heal in the same place that hurt you. You cannot be there and help each other if you guys are both, bleeding out in your own process. So it's like, go get a therapist, go get a friend, and that is what's going to help. And building community and having accountability is always the best. I remember also in the processes of feeling lonely, and I shared about that in the last episode about when you get there, it's so empowering and it's so helpful. But how during those moments you start doubting the decisions that you made. I was in this relationship for many years, and I remember during the process of, I guess, finally accepting that it wasn't going to work out, it was like in the relationship towards the end, I was like, maybe this isn't what's best for me, because I've lost myself. It's affecting my body, my health, my mind, my relationships. And I still wanted though what I wanted, and I still like wanted to fight for it. But I felt like by the time that it was over and everything like that, the moments that I felt like the most loneliness, I was like, maybe I should just kind of just settle back. You know what I mean? Like maybe try it again, And I saw how even those thoughts, like they're normal, and that I want to normalize that. Like those things can come up, but it's important what you do during those things and those moments, because those are vulnerable moments, that can take you back to be exactly where you started. I remember that during like post breakup, what was very hard was like, I would say the hoovering. So the hoovering is like when someone ends the relationship, but like they still are around. So like they're either liking your stuff, emailing, texting, calling. And that kept me stuck there for a very long time, because it's like the constant reminder of like, oh, what was, like, oh, like, I wish things would have worked out, or like, I miss you, or, I have these regrets. And that was hard for me, because I had decided to move forward, and I had blocked this person, and it continued happening, for a very long time. And so that whole process of like, man, like I felt like in a way it was like a selfish thing of their part, because they weren't allowing me to move forward. And I had conversations and had said like, hey, like I can't be your friend. I can't do this. I can't do that. And it was very hard for this person to accept that and to finally like let it go. And I think that also made me sometimes doubt my decisions of being like, well, this person is there, this person is trying, but then again, going back into the cycle would end up in the same exact place. So that can also stop you from moving forward, is the contact, but also someone else continually like overstepping the boundary to either contact or to tell you how much they regret things, when it's like, no. Something that I would say, if I was in my early 20s, something that I feel like I would not do again is continuously give someone chances. I know people change, people have mistakes, and you're young, but I definitely think that we allow things and people to treat us a certain way that eventually gets to the place where people tell you like, I know you're going to be around, so like, I'm just going to do whatever, and I can treat you however, because you've been able to accept me every time back again. And they kind of get used to that. And so for me, that was the most hurtful thing. And I realized how many times I've done that before, how many times I would justify behavior, or how many times I would just sweep it under the rug, or like just try to see the best in things, when in reality, like people show you through their patterns how it will be. Like, a mistake is one thing. But if someone's consistently doing something that is disrespectful, that's who they are. That's their character. And so if I was to go back, I definitely would say that was one thing that I would have done differently. And also cutting it off earlier, because I feel like when I kind of dragged it out and still trying to like keep that, because you don't want to look like the bad person, you don't want to look like the one that's being so dramatic. So that took me a while to get to the place where I'm like, no, this is what I need to do. And no matter how I look, and no matter what you tell other people, I know my truth, and I know what is best for me. And that's what I'm going to do. And so you being consistent with your boundaries, and you being consistent about where you stand, that is the only way you will continue to move forward, is by continuously, consistently showing up and doing and changing and sticking to it. Because there will be many days that you think or have some self-doubt of decisions that you make that were the best decision for you, but they don't feel good at the moment. So that is something that has been my process throughout. And I think when I was able to work on, what helped me a lot was like my therapy work. I was able to see the pattern, the things that I had in my dysfunction, and how when I would talk about things that happened, when I would share how I felt or like certain things like that, it validated why that relationship wasn't going to work out. And so sometimes you have to make a list and remind yourself why it didn't work out. And the moments that really made you like question either your worth, your value, and the moments that you lost yourself, because that is the reality. We sometimes like over time, we start romanticizing the past, or we start romanticizing a relationship when it's like, there was good and bad, but clearly that wasn't the best fit for you. So there was some dysfunction in it. And so I know that for myself now, I can look at it holistically or see it as a whole versus just like a one thing, and just be like, okay, these are the things that I would do differently. These are the things that I did wrong and things that I wouldn't allow for a future relationship, and where I would like cut it right away. And so it's helped me, to be able to look back and evaluate, but it took a long time to get there. It was a process. It was a lot of tears. It was a lot of moments that even through this podcast, like there was days that like something had just happened, and being able to like not I would say I have shared this before, but it's like kind of like not bleed over and talk about it. It's more like I want to talk about things that I'm healed from or like already worked through, not stuff that I'm still processing or working through. So it was hard like last year and the year before, where it was like there was stuff happening that I couldn't really talk about yet. And so now I'm at a much better place. But I want to be honest that I know that like when you're in cycles of dysfunction, it is so hard to get out. And sometimes it's so easy to go back versus moving forward, because you don't know what the moving forward looks like, and you don't know if it's going to be good, and you don't know if you're going to make it, and you don't know if you're going to meet someone, But I feel like, just like how I shared last week, I think that the unpopular opinion is thinking that moving forward means to move forward to someone else. I think it's really about you finding yourself. You can literally move on and never go back to your ex by choosing yourself and focusing on the things that you're doing for yourself, and feeling loved in your community by feeling like, those areas that maybe used to be with someone else, like now it's like you have a full life. And so I hope you got something out of today's episode. Just wanted to share that part. I will be doing throughout the year just different series on singleness, dating, and all of that. So thank you so much for tuning into this week's podcast episode. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and I will see you guys next week.